Whakaloflai atu ki matorosi, ke tamatua whewhine, ke tamatua tane whakaloflai atu. Ai mumu lava o te whātalofa atu, le paia le mamalu, tālofa lava, e ngā mana, e ngā reo, e rauranga tira mā, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa. So there's my name, Karl Anthony James Vasau. Along the top there are my flags. So those flags represent all the different rugby league teams that I could play for at the World Cup or the Netball World Cup or whichever World Cup I ever make. Sometimes it's very easy to explain the first three flags because people will get that from my name, people will get that from what I look like. It gets complicated to try and explain the last three flags because obviously, unless you know me, you don't know how much Irish, English, or Scottish I am. And sometimes it's even more difficult to explain the middle flag, especially when you're a New Zealand-born Pacific Islander and you see New Zealand as your home. And so a lot of our children appear at schools and sometimes we choose which flag they fly. And so if you get to know me, you'll understand that I'm very much every single one of those flags, as you would most of the people you work with as well. That's my close-knit group. So Geneva is my partner. She's Māori Pākehā, Ngāti Toa and Ngāpuhi. And then that's Karl Jr. in the middle, Karl Dose. Didn't think I could make anything like that. And once he came along as a principal, you know, you get a lot of parents come to you with certain issues. And sometimes we would call it, you know, very respectfully, they've just been a little bit precious this moment about their child. Well, when I had mine, now I understand all that love. And now I understand and I fear, you know, once upon a time, me, you know, going down to see my son's teacher. He goes to my school as well. There's my OGs, my originals, my mother in the middle and at the front there. Her name is April Ngari Agnes O'Dwyer. And so if you heard her name there, you would then kind of make that connection to some of those flags up the top there. My father in the corner, Kalavonu Kutufi, and then my brother and sister. This side of the slide is something that for me is very special. Don't like looking at the top photo because those two are now in heaven. Those are my grandparents, my Samoan side. Down the bottom are my Niuean grandparents who are still very much alive and teaching me. To understand Pacific culture and identity, grandparents set the tone for families. Grandparents allow us to create a culture within our own families. And sometimes people will understand how much of a Samoan or a Niuean I am if they understood who my grandparents were. And so that's important. And we know as teachers working in schools and leaders that grandparents are continual unsung heroes of our children and continue to be, even though they've raised their own, now they're raising another set. Like I said before, I'd like to speak in public, referee every sport under the sun. Yeah, and I breed showbird budgies. So I'm pretty good. I've entered a few competitions. I've got so many little awards. Next time I'll bring some of my ribbons and show you those. But that's something that grounds me. Along the bottom there are my last names, which are very important to me, every single one of those names. And then of course the villages that I link to. My mother was born in Vailima in Samoa. My father was born in Alofi in Niue, but I was born in Grey Lynn. And for Pacific people, where you are born, especially if it's in New Zealand, also is very important to our identity. I can stand sometimes and listen to a Samoan person from Christchurch and know exactly that they were from Christchurch just by their accent or the way in which they tell jokes, or their jokes may not be funny to me, or a Niuean born in Wellington, a Tongan born up north. It's very important that they understand where you are born. So that's that whole identity thing, and we've heard that from the two speakers beforehand. Can I acknowledge Bilu and Mel for the wonderful talk they gave? I'm the graveyard shift, so I'm the last speaker. And man, I was dreading following those two, but just in awe of their knowledge and their ability to share and to talanoa and do so courageously. So I've written heaps of notes. So any presentation now that I go forward, I'll think about acknowledging them and what they've taught me from their presentations, but courageous leaders in schools, so I acknowledge that. Just in case you're wondering whether or not I've worked in a school before, I thought I'd show you my road and my journey. He started teaching in Manuriwa, and now I'm back in Manuriwa, principal of Rowandale School. Yeah, just love it. I could tell you, 6 or 7 webinars about all of those different schools there, and we all have our stories in relation to. And if I could show you how much I've grown as a Pacific person from the time I started at Randwick Park to now, massive ups and downs, heaps of learnings, but it's always about finding oneself. And Mel talked about it earlier, where she said that sometimes we don't realize that the behavior, even as a Pacific person, we have is actually based on, some of this colonial way in which we were raised. And until you're ready to face that, and face your demons and bring it out in the open, then yeah, you won't be able to grow for your community and for yourselves and your family. So why carrying the tapa? So the talk I'm going to give you today, hopefully you'll be able to grab something from it and just say, oh yeah, and write something down somewhere. But I just thought I'd just leave it open and just share some of the stuff that I do constantly. So for the last, almost 15 years, I've been sharing a PLD called Carrying the Tapa. You can see in the picture there, those children carrying the piece of tapa nice and high. And for the majority of Pacific cultures, tapa is a taonga, a treasure, in which we give weddings, funerals, to say sorry, to say thank you, birthdays, and it's our taonga. One of the clear things about our taonga, and most taonga in all cultures, is that there is a special way you give this, but there's also a special way you receive it. So you don't just, go up and say, oh, thank you, Maria, for your work, and hand you a piece of tapa, and then she says, oh, all the best, yeah, I've been wanting this. There are ways, there's a ceremony, there's a process in which we do that. And so if we were to think of the mana or our Pacific children as pieces of tapa, every day, this piece of tapa is delivered to your school, delivered at the gate. This piece of tapa that happens to be your staff are delivered to you in your school every day. Sometimes the tapa is a little bit damaged. Sometimes it's wonderful and the best. Sometimes it's a little bit, got some holes and things like that. But as schools and as staff, how do we receive this tapa? Do we receive it with the reverence that it's supposed to be? And so if we put those analogies aside and just look at those children, so I believe that holding a piece of tapa, holding the mana of children in our schools up high and presenting it well and receiving it well is possible and can be done by everyone. You do not need to be Pasifika to carry a piece of tapa or to receive it. You just have to be taught or shown what to do. And I've been to many a wedding, and I'm sure some of the Pacific people on this call, we know when that certain part of the wedding comes up where they're going to hand over the mats and the tapa, and some of us do the ninja and start sneaking away because we're going to get caught, but others get trapped. And usually some of those trapped people aren't even from our family, they're usually the in-laws. And I see them proudly carrying those pieces of tapa because they were shown how to, or they had a 30-second lesson. So I believe in that. Once upon a time, maybe my thoughts weren't like that, but I've evolved in the way in which I think. And so everybody has that ability to carry the tapa. So that's why I call that. If you want to find out more about this, just book me and I'll come and do an hour of power with your staff where we unpack this and we can go on for hours and hours and hours. Let's see if this changes to the next slide. One of the things that drives me, and I know many of Pacifica, and I've seen this and felt this in many schools, is this framework of tala noa. And, if we look loosely at the word, if you're unfamiliar, tala, talk, noa, neutral, nothing. So it's that talk about nothing, we can solve the problems of the world. And some wonderful academics have kind of pulled out from understanding the word tala noa 4 key values that are shared across the Pacific in relation to this word. Sometimes this word is shared amongst cultures in the Pacific. Sometimes it isn't used like this, but the concept is the same, where we sit around and we come from a place of respect, where we have that warmth, where we have malie and humor and the love. Humor is important. We all know ourselves from our own, that a bit of humor every now and then is very, very important. Really wanting to be there and feeling the warmth, that respect. If you feel these in a classroom, the children will engage. If you feel this in a staff meeting, the staff will listen and last to the end. if you go into a parent consultation meeting with these 4 values that underpin exactly what you're doing, you'll get so much more connection and input from those parents. Funny thing is, these values are across most cultures, not just Pacific. And these things are important. I even use these things when I'm doing some, disciplinary meetings with my staff. I make sure these are there, even though someone will go, "Do you make someone you're girling laugh?" Yeah, of course I can. It's just getting those feelings, that trust that Bill talked about, that building the trust. If it's not there, so I'm the trusted adult when it comes to certain conversations, and this is how I work. I've evolved into this. So this has taken many forms right through my career. Sometimes I've forgotten this myself personally, and I haven't put that at the forefront. But if you are a leader or an RTLB and you come into schools and you are using this in your interactions with people, never fail. Once again, if you'd like to find out more about this, book me and I'll come and talk to you a little bit more. There's so much online in relation to Talanoa. And this is the stuff that they use when Mel and Pedro are talking about tearing the va. If this informs the relationships and the way in which you communicate with each other, then you're going to get amazing things happening. I'd like to share something else that's important for me and for other Pacific people, and it's understanding my why. Why you do what you do. And, you've been challenged by the other speakers about, well, if you're not here for the right reasons, then, get off the waka, or, all the best at countdown. So this here is, a saying that Saint Marcelin Champagne, someone that I value dearly in my back in the day's life. One of the things he taught his early brothers, was if you want to teach young people, you must first love them. And that's pretty much what we do. But that second part there, but you must love them equally. That is the challenge that I turn up every day for. Every day. We know that sometimes little Johnny or little Philippa turns up to school and it's very hard. You scratch your head, you're like, oh, someone loves you and I better love you. And that's that challenge. Loving all our children equally, making sure that they don't feel the difference. Our children aren't silly. Our adults aren't silly. We know when you don't love them. And I believe firmly in this, that if your heart is in it and you love these children as your own, then you will have better connections. So this is what drives me as one of my whys. Another one of my whys, and I'm sure the same with Pacific and teachers working in schools and all RTLBs, is children. It's been a while since I've been in the classroom, and sometimes I think to myself, oh, I might do a little bit of damage if I had to go and release this class. I could babysit well, but I hire wonderful people to carry out these roles as teachers in these schools. And so for me, I have a special role in a school. It's not to do everything, but when I have a special role in my servant leadership, we talk about that through this, is that I play this role. So at the top there, prize givings, I'm that guy that takes the really flash photos. I stand up there with all the necklaces, and some of my teachers sometimes say, look at all those necklaces. Well, I did everything myself, those ones. But it's important that I play this role well in order for our village and our family to go forward. And that's my way of service, getting up there, having the big cheese smile, being there for children when they come to my office to share their work and to celebrate with them. It's very important that I play this role in order for me to show my leadership, show my service for my community. In order for me to serve and to be a great leader, and for my whys, it's about Pacific principles. And so in this picture here, there are 2 places in which we as Pacific New Zealand Pacifica principles like to go. So first top picture there is us going on professional development up in the Hokianga. And so, we thought we'd go to one of the places where one of the most ancient and most popular Polynesian voyages, Kupe, landed. And so we go there to see where Kupe came in, and we just connect and think, hey, generations ago, our cousin came here and found this place. And so now we've just come in and we're staying in our cousin's house. And then, of course, down the bottom there, we connect with the Pacific. Realm countries are very important to us as New Zealand Pacific principles. So we went off to Niue, we ran a conference there, and then of course we swam in the beautiful waters and connected with each other. That kind of, connection where Peru talks about lalanga. Our principals, our teachers need to also lalanga with themselves in order to build those relationships. But one of my big whys is this one. Now, I haven't yet found the application form to RTLB to refer my class. This is my class. the class of adults that work in schools, the challenge that I turn up and I go to work for every day. This bunch here keeps me going. As my service to my community, this is the group that I love to work with. And as you can see, they're all different shades of everything. But this is the challenge that I love. Sometimes teachers will come to you and say, oh, yeah, my 5-year-olds, and oh, yeah, my 11-year-old. No, you try work with these, you try make these people play nicely, share, don't throw their toys, and so that's the challenge. And that's some of my why that I turn up for. Some of the others is that I love within my school, my leadership team is also something that I value dearly with my why, growing them as well as they growing me, and having that tight knit. All leaders, in order for them to serve well, must be supported well by a good leadership team. Of course, setting the example and leading from example and showing people what service looks like. So studying alongside my staff and being able to celebrate with them as well. And then this photo here is of my son, Karl Vasau, and this was his 5th birthday. I pretty much on the 3rd day of his life brought him into my staff room and said, look, everyone, this is what I made. I was so proud. I came back to my school. That's my family. I treat them as my family. I show them everything that I've done as well. And so my son's been pretty much coming into my school ever since he was born. So the dreaded conversation with my partner, what school is he going to? Now, I've always been one of those fans that when I speak to people, I say to them, well, if your school is not good enough for your own children, then why should we accept all the other pieces of tapa delivered to us every day, with then your tapa's going down the road, or your tapa? Now, we've got the provision, and I'm very fortunate in my family and in our situation to be able to choose these perceived amazing schools. But no, I was having it no other way but my son coming to my school. And so he loves it. He loves the school. Maybe at intermediate or high school, we can start doing getting a little bit picky, but I love the fact that my son comes to school. Just a quick on the side, first assembly. Now on the way to school that week, his first week, I said to him, son, remember, I'm the boss at school, okay? And you listen to me. Yes, Dad, I know. So if people call me Mr. Vasau, you have to call me Mr. Vasau too. Yeah, Dad, I know. First assembly, I walk in, huge voice from in there. Hi, Dad. And it was the proudest dad moment of all my life. I had no shame. I had no fear that my son was being acknowledged in my school, but I was proud to have my son in my school and to have him with me. I'd just like you to think about it for a little while, just a few seconds, few minutes. Part of my talk when I go to schools and talk about carrying the tapa is key significant Pacific people. So this is just a small slide that I use to try and get people to think about what are Pacific, who are they? So I'd like you to jot down 3 names of key Pacific celebrities, famous people on a piece of paper right now, but you can't write down any sports people. So, or think in your head, 3 key Pacific people. Now, think about these 3 people because they came straight to your head. You had them off by heart. They're your fans, they're your fan club. And I'd like you to think about these people. And I'd like you to think now, why are they so celebrity? Why are they amazing? How was their piece of tapa delivered to school every day? And what was it different that their schools did to receive the tapa, to create and to support and to help towards creating this amazing person? And I'd like to show you some of the people that are on my tapa, and I hope maybe you had some of my ones. Of course, there's heaps that we could put on some of these tapas. Let's have a look at some. Did anyone have Adrian Orr, the governor of the Reserve Bank? Some people forget that he's part Cook Island, and that sometimes when we're watching the news and I sit there and I listen to how he's been very controversial with interest rates and things like that and challenging, I think this is Cook Island side coming out. This is viciousness. Of course, he doesn't look Cook Island, but what was it different that his school did to help him to become the governor of the Reserve Bank? Carmel Sepuloni, the Minister of Social Development, trained at Teachers College with me, Samoa girl from Waitara, doing amazing things. People in Parliament now look like us. It's just, it's great for people like me. Barbara Alalatua. She was the former principal of Sylvia Park School, but one of the claims to fame for us is that she was the first chairperson of the Teachers' Council. It was a Samoan girl from Mangere. For us, that's, anyway, I'll just keep going. Ross Taylor, captain of the, all Black Caps. Only when he could hit the ball was he a Samoan, but of course, every now and then we'd like to claim him. But an amazing role model now, someone who's actually now talking about some of his experiences that he had when he was coming through the ranks. At the time, didn't speak about them, but now having the courage to come forward and speak. Rob Limoto, I'm sure we've seen him on Police 10-7, but he's part Tongan. And so, just to see someone like that on television, I want to show that maybe some of us watch. Of course, there's the man himself, The Rock, somebody who actually swipes his EFTPOS card and it always works. Pacific role model, came to New Zealand for a little while on his way to America, spent time in Greyland. Hugh Graham, one of the first super council representatives on the council in Auckland. One time he spoke to me about some of the emails he used to receive where it said, oh, if I knew you were a Pacifica, I would never have voted for you. Things like this where people, now he's just, got an all right job. He sits on the Commonwealth Games Committee. So what he does is he travels to Geneva once a month for a meeting, flies back to the Cook Islands where he lives now. Great job. So Anand Satanam, first, kind of ethnic Governor General of New Zealand, Fijian Indian. People forget and forget to celebrate this as Pacific people, that this man has made huge contributions to the role when he played as Governor General. Monica Galetti, winner of that MasterChef UK, Samoan girl from Wellington. Now she's on this amazing hotels kind of program where the man always talks over her. She's amazing. When you see her on TV, you just think, wow, what was it that her teacher every day did for her in her classroom that treated her with such reverence that now this piece of tapa is, amazing, shine. Philip Tola, the High Commissioner to Papua New Guinea. If you watch the All Blacks game in South Africa, the High Commissioner for New Zealand and South Africa was walking down the middle, Samoan girl. So, these jobs where we have this perception or this bias that they don't look like us. They're starting to look like me. New Zealand are trusting us overseas with our secrets. So, it's just, the world is changing and shifting. Piri Wipu, wonderful Maori boy, but also never forgets that his grandfather was Niuean. So, of course, we all think he's full Niuean. And then my favorite one, my cousin. I was watching this program one night, and there was the singer, she sang. And then the judges asked her, what nationality are you? She said, I'm half Samoan and I'm half French. And then Manu was one of the judges, Manu, the French judge, chef, and he turns to Nicole and he goes, oh, this could be our daughter. And I was like, Manu's not Samoan. Nicole, you cannot be Samoan. So what do? You Google, you write in Nicole Scherzinger, one of her grandmothers is Samoan. So now, of course, she's full-blooded Samoan from my village. But the thing I'm trying to get here is what are these pieces of tapa in your schools? Are these pieces of tapa children that you as RTLB or leaders are working with right now? What are you doing in order for these pieces of tapa to be shining up, to be held up high, to be lifted up, the manner of these children and the manner of their families as well? There's just some of my, don't ask any of them. I don't think any of them remember me. You heard at the start there that at the moment I'm having a year off at school and I'm doing this little professional development called Tautai RTLB National, captaining of the oceans, wayfinder of the ocean. And what it involves is that we have facilitators who are all former principals or current principals on release, working alongside principals who put their hand up and said, I'd like to really work on building my capabilities and my capacity in relation to Pacifica. So we go on a journey. You know and I know that you don't sail a boat unless you know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to sink and everybody's going to die. You need to know how to sail a boat. I am just blown away sometimes by some of these principles that when they put their hand up, they thought they did not have the answers, but they did. They do have it. They just need to be surrounded and supported by people that, believe in them and can show them their ways, can be courageous enough to call out certain things. I'm really enjoying my work this year with my 10 principals in Auckland. I've got Decile 10 schools right through to Decile 1. And I just love the work. One of the schools I work in, there are 7 Pacific children in their school. So when I visited the principal, I was like, can't you sort out your 7? That's not a very big number. Why do you need me? And she said, but I believe in this pedagogy because I believe that if I engage in this program, I can better connect with all my families. She taught me a massive lesson that day. And so for me, it's important that we share this type of pedagogy. So I'm in it for the long run, looking forward to continue to work with principals in relation to this professional development. We look at these things here, these words, these concepts that align to sailing those boats. And then, of course, some people will ask, why are we, here today focusing on Pacifica? What does this got to do with anything at all? Why are the RTLB running this webinar? If we look at the national learning priorities from the government, and we look at those at the top there, they all align closely with things like kahikatia, tapasa, and the Tautai Ako. Also the Pacific Education Plan, the Action Plan for Pacifica Education. All of these things align. It's important for us to realize that when we do things, it's part of a bigger picture. And so sometimes I'm helping these principals and their staff realize that it's not that we just created tapasa because their competencies, but it all links back to the national learning priorities, to all of them, to all of these goals. And so, yeah, this is just us connecting the doc. Hopefully you're taking a screenshot. If you want it, like I said, book me and I'll come out and I'll share this with your staff and we'll unpack it. We'll have a look at your own documents within your school and see if they align. I told you I'd just give you a bit of a chat and then just see if you can take anything from that. I'm always in awe of the respectful way in which RTLBs enter schools. It must be hard. You must see so many different schools and different situations. You must have welcoming relationships and others. And sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I have to say my name every time because no one remembers me. But it's important that you continue to do the work that you do. We have to ensure as schools and as principals that positions like RTLB and the funding in relation to RTLB needs to be preserved. We've seen other resource teachers and support teachers in different areas across schools slowly lose their funding and their staffing numbers. So I'm moved to hear from Maria of the numbers of RTLB that are out there, in particular of Pacifica ones. So for me, that's a celebration, just having one, but you've got 30, so that's amazing. Your gang's getting bigger. But also taking on board what Brian said, where the critical mass is not there, so it's building the capability and the capacity of the RTLB that you have, believing that every one of your RTLB have the ability to hold the tapa up high. And yeah, that's where I think I'll look at my notes first time. Or hold it there. I've had a talanoa. Hopefully you've just been able just to listen to my story to find the connections there. It's an example of Tautai. It's an example of Tautua. It's an example of leadership based on heaps and heaps of learning I've had to make over my years. I haven't always been this perfect. Inga mana, inga reo, giving you an early lunch o rauranga tira ma na mihi nui kia koutou katoa.
Karl, thank you so much. I think I'm going to, just before I hand it over to Malia, who will say formal thank yous. I think what you've said and shared today is a lot for us to take in, and it's really good information, but it's we can feel your passion coming through and the mahi that you've given into the schools that you've worked with in the past and currently right now. I'm just looking at the question and answer. There are no, you must have answered everyone's question during the webinar because there's no questions open. So I'm just wondering.
I think I didn't give them any content to ask questions about. I think if I could just add that in the past 4 weeks, we've had 7 new Pacific principals appointed to different schools right across the country. from a new Kiribati young lady who's taken over at a school in Porirua, right through to a Samoan and a Tongan boy in Palmerston North. And the thing that we need to be wary of is what structures and what processes are there to support good quality Pacific leadership in those places. And so, yeah, I'd just like to share some of those knowledges and that stuff. I'm very lucky in Manurewa. I'm surrounded by so many wonderful principals. And you know, I couldn't have ended up in a better place to learn from people. But just be wary that, you know, we've got two, I think Malia said you've got two leader manager RTLBs, is that right, Malia? Yeah, let's aim for a little bit more. Remember, 2050, 20% of school-aged children in New Zealand will be of Pasifika descent. So all other areas in schooling must match that. We need 20% of RTLBs being Pacific, 20% of, not because they're better, but because hopefully they will be quality and our children will be able to see themselves in us. Or if not, 20% real quality RTLB, non-Pacifica, but they've got all the skills and all the tricks.
Absolutely, Karl. I think what's important about our role as RTLB is that it doesn't matter what you are, what culture you're from. I think you, Mel, and Bill said the same thing, and I hear the word connectedness. It's about whakawhanaungatanga. It's about building those relationships. Because if you can't build those relationships, especially in the schools that you work with, it is probably time to reflect on where you're at and look at another job, because that's the important role of the RTLB. If you can't build a relationship, you're going to have some issues and some major issues. Then I'm very thankful that all three of you have said and mentioned something of that. I'm going to quickly hand it over. Oh, hang on. I've got a question. Yes, the question's come through from Debbie Riley. How can we get you? How can we get you in, Karl, to talk to our cluster? Is there a cost involved, obviously?
So this year for Tautai RTLB, we've got professional development funding. Tautai RTLB, okay. NZPPA, New Zealand Pacifica Principles, has a professional development arm called Tautai RTLB. Tautai RTLB recently became Ministry of Education accredited PLB providers. So we can get through ours, through schools, but for your cluster, email Malia or Ben or Brian. You'll find my email address. Tell me when you want me down there. Where is your cluster?
They're based in Otahu.
Just down the road.
They're just around the corner, absolutely. Mate. Just around the corner.
As soon as I finish this webinar, I walk up some stairs. So I'm at Albany Junior High School. As soon as I finish this, walk up these stairs and I'm presenting to a kahui aku, you know, just on carrying the tapa. So an hour and a half with them. So please just contact them.
Much thanks, Karl. Mali, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you again, Karl, for your wisdom, for your expertise, and for your sharing, and for your mahi.
Whaatalo whaatu le anganga whaaloalo I lau se sunga le pule a o ngā Karl Vasau. Whawhitai te le lava lau se sunga Karl, mo lau sau I le ola o aina o tupulanga. E le ngata le Pasifika au Aotearoa New Zealand. Ua whaavailu o langa o aina ia tūmanga nuu a Pasifika sa moa maniwe. Ua avea oe ma whaataitainga, an example for us all. With deep respect, we thank you, Karl, for your contribution to teaching successive generations of Pacific learners in Aotearoa. And you exemplify a life that is grounded and anchored in the communities in which we serve. Pakawe lahi ova e wahaloto. And just as you know, we have a celebrity in our midst who is the Karl Vasau that you've just seen. So I hope you don't mind this, Karl. I'm sure you won't. Karl and I did a bilingual paper, I think back in the early 2000s. So he was a star in that class, but I didn't know he was also in a TV series. And it was an awesome story about a netball team, a Pacific netball team. There he goes, and I think it was called Lima Lele, eh, Karl?
Lima Lele, good hands, good hands.
Good hands. So, yeah, so celebrity in the house. There you go. Hope you don't charge extra for that, Karl. And we look forward to seeing you in our neighbourhood, in our clusters. And, you know, I'm sure you'll score a trip down to Invercargill, down to see Brent, and hopefully to see Michelle in Christchurch.